Hello, and welcome to the Brooklyn Rail's 334th New Social Environment. I'm Sophia Pedlow, the Managing Director at the Rail, and I have the pleasure and privilege of being your MC today for a conversation celebrating 25 years of the LeRoy Neiman Center for Print Studies. We're thrilled to have the poet Noa Mendoza here, who will read today to close today's program. A few quick notes before we get started. The Rail team will be helping out with tech if you have questions, and closed captions are available by pressing the live transcript button at the bottom of the screen. We start all our events with two important acknowledgements. The first is that here in New York, we are on the Lenape-Hoking, the unceded land and waters of the Wapinga, Canarsie, Munsee, and Lenni Lenape people of the Delaware Nation and the Shinnecock Indian Nation. The second is an acknowledgement that Black Lives Matter. The heart of both of these acknowledgements is a commitment to the liberation of the oppressed and solidarity for all who struggle for freedom, in recognition that when it comes to liberation, our histories never unfold in isolation. Thank you to Angela Davis for those words. In that spirit, I encourage you all to check out the chat for a living document of resources and actions that we've been sharing among ourselves. And now I'm thrilled to hand the mic over to Lilly Wei.
Thank you, Sophia. Good afternoon. I'm Lilly Wei, and a New York-based art critic, independent curator, and journalist. And I thank you all for joining us today. And I thank you, Brooklyn Rail, for your tremendous team, not only for hosting today's event, but also for hosting this wide-ranging, engrossing, and often restorative series of talks during this long, devastating plague year. Which I hope is now over or almost so. So we're here today in honor of the 25th anniversary of the LeRoy Neiman Center for Print Studies at Columbia University's School of the Arts, and also in honor of printmakers and printmaking. It is also the 100th birthday of LeRoy Neiman, who was born on June 8th, 1921. So it's coming up fast. So we should celebrate that too. And to begin, here's a very, very quick snapshot of LeRoy Neiman and his 6-decade career. He was an extraordinarily popular and successful artist, known worldwide for his dramatic flair in depicting sporting, entertainment, social, and political events, and for depicting celebrities from those realms as well. His work reaching millions through television and print, which made him a star also. He had also a 50-year association with Playboy that ended only with his death in 2012 at the age of 91. And he was the official artist for 5 Olympics beginning in 1972. He painted the Kirov and Bolshoi dancers and the New York Jets made him their artist in residence. He documented the 1968 Democratic Convention and the 1972 Bobby Fischer-Boris Spassky World Chess Championship. He painted Broadway theater sets, illustrated album covers, made posters for the Newport Jazz Festival and the Super Bowl, and much, much more. He traveled widely, and he loved what he did, and he made money in the days when artists were supposed to be happy starving in their cold water flats and lost tapping into Con Ed meters on the sly. Because he was successful and because he was born evidently with a generosity and gratitude gene, he and his wife, Janet Byrne Neiman, established the LeRoy Neiman Foundation in 1986. Its laudable mission was to support arts education. The foundation created the Neiman Center for Print Studies at Columbia in 1996, and balancing East Coast and West Coast, they founded the LeRoy Neiman Center for the Study of American Culture and Society at UCLA in 1998, among a multitude of other philanthropic ventures. He believed in an art that was accessible to everyone, not just the cognoscenti. And he wanted to help young artists, young students who were disadvantaged, spurred, no doubt, by the difficult circumstances of his own early life, turned around in part by the GI Bill that put him through the Art Institute of Chicago, where he also taught for 10 years. So now I'm going to turn this over to Tomas Vu, the one and only artistic director of the center since it opened, to tell you more about it. And just before I do, I'd like to welcome the remarkable Kiki Smith, Rirkrit Tiravanija. Is that okay, Rirkrit? And Sarah Z, Shahzia Sikander, and Sanford Biggers, who will tell us about their experience at the center, each working at different times during the past 25 years, and some returning regularly as part of the center's family. So we'll look at some of the work they produced while there and have a conversation about printmaking and what draws them to it. So Tomas?
Thank you. Thank you. Well, you said just about everything I was going to say, so I'm going to throw this out the window. Thank you for nothing. But to touch on LeRoy's generosity and visionary, when I was first hired in 1996, he asked to meet with me to find out who I was and to introduce himself to what he wanted. And for LeRoy, it's about how can you give back to the next generation of artists. And that was the key thing for LeRoy. He throughout my experience with LeRoy, every time I would either meet him or leave him, he would say, make sure you take care of the next generation. And by that mean financially or access to what Columbia was offering, the artists, the kind of education that you touch upon. It's like disadvantaged students, artists from a lot of inner city. He would always bring that up as part of the issue. So to carry out this idea, this vision, we started, I mean, you know, we had no idea that the printmaking, the publication branch was going to be as successful as it was. It was designed to teach. So we bring artists in, they work with the graduate students, and that's the collaborations, and that's, you know, naturally, that's where we were heading to, using it as a teaching tools. But then the byproduct of that is that there are all of these prints, editions that sort of was generated by the students and by the artists and with the help of the students. And so that became an issue because now we're starting to make money. So then LeRoy just want to make sure that we turn that back into fellowship. And so whatever we made from the artists, that would then be generated to scholarship for the next generation and so on and so forth. Okay, I think that's the first artist I would like to talk about. It's, well, Kiki, because she was our first artist that we invited into the center. Kiki, I'm sorry.
Hi.
Okay.
Hi.
And the reason why Kiki, I mean, it was, I wanted to talk to Kiki first because she was our first project in 2007, right, Kiki?
Yes.
Started?
I mean, I don't know what year it was, but yes.
Somewhere around there. And I knew that Kiki wanted to do a project that involved with, she wanted to make do a project, but then also include part of the Columbia ecosystem that we have here. And so, Kiki, you want to jump in on this?
Yeah, Tomas and I knew each other from Mass College of Art, where we had made a really large project. And then, so when he went to Columbia, he very kindly took me with him and invited me to make a print. And, you know, I went very little to college, but I knew Columbia must have great resources. And I thought I wanted more resources than just the print department. So I thought they must have an observatory. And they have a little observatory right on campus that's very cute and beautiful. And we went up there and several times they made photographs of the moon through their telescope. And, you know, for me, that was really exciting, you know, because, you know, I am not very adventurous or, you know, doing much of anything other than what's right in front of my, you know, nose. So to have access to a telescope was really an extraordinary experience. And then we made this print, and Tomas and I made the photographs. You know, he helped me with the photographs. And then we asked Tom Roma, who was the head of the photography department at the time, and who made beautiful homemade panoramic cameras, if we could use his camera, and to Coney Island to make photographs. And we went to Coney Island, and you know, he set up photographs and I got to push the button. He wasn't going to just give me his camera, but then we made it. It's based on like prayer Bibles, waist Bibles, you know, early printed Bibles where they would print the book and then have leather bounding, and then extended leather that could sit in one's belt, you know, so that a Bible could hang off your belt. And so I used the soft Gampi paper at the bottom to be like that it had some life to it.
Yeah.
And it was an accordion fold book.
Yeah, so this is 13 feet long, I think, close to it. Oh, 10 it says here.
Yeah, and then I made a pretend publishing company called 13 Moons because of it. Yeah. So it must have been then.
Yes. Can we go to the next image? So obviously, I mean, with the center, when we invite an artist, then wow, this is blurry. They can always come back. As you can see, all of our artists have done multiple projects with us, but it becomes where you become part of this family narrative that we have. And so Kiki did this, this is 2015. So obviously it's almost 7 or 8 years after Tidal. But also I should say that every artist that are represented here, the reason why we have this selection is because every one of the artists have always been involved with the program, with the school one way or another. We bring them in, and then I think everyone, you can tell right away when an artist is generous and they are able to work and want to work with the graduate students. And that's how the relationship continue over the years. So I think everyone here has come back one way or another, two, three different projects. Okay, Kiki, you.
Oh, well, also what's been really great is that some of the artists that have come have never really had the opportunity to make prints. And you know, that's a tremendous opportunity to have in one's life. And also to work, you know, I mean, I started at my kitchen table, but to be able to be around people that actually have a knowledge in their bodies and in their, you know, psyches, that if you can make leaps and bounds in making things. The print right before Esperanza, that one was, I made pictures of the projects at the end of my block with daffodils coming up and then all these raindrops falling down. And then I just thought, you know, it's like my really hippy dippy roots, sort of East Village roots. And then I was too embarrassed by it. So then I etched out the entire background. And I also, you know, for me, a lot of my printmaking has been about learning techniques, you know, and also learning on the job, learning techniques that then I can go print, you know, teach in printmaking class with Valerie Hammond, you know. So this was using soap ground, which I had never really used. I mean, there's so many techniques in etching that affords you that you really can spend a lifetime learning about it. But, you know, so each thing has its own trajectory, its own, you know, strange way that it unfolds and comes into existence.
All right. Can we go to the next? Yeah. The fourth one down? Yeah.
But this is, I guess, the most recent one I made. And this I love because I also teach with Valerie Hammond at NYU. And you know, a lot of what we end up making into prints are really demonstration plates in class. And so I was trying to show them how to register, make 4-color prints and register. And Valerie said it made her sick. So then I really tried to make her sick. I made about 10 of these prints and tried to make, you know, like have the colors and the images, you know, how, you know, you can do that with mores. You can make people sick, but you can also just with this, yeah, too much information moving in space. And, you know, that's a little bit how life can look sometimes like that, where you're seeing, you know, lots of pattern in space. But I was very proud that I could make someone sick with my artwork.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know what to say after that.
You can get rid of me now. You can go on to the
Okay, we'll come back to you. All right, so I think the next would be Rirkrit. And with Rirkrit, it was a big challenge because also Rirkrit was traveling a lot, and with this project, what Rirkrit wanted to do is he said, "Listen, I'll send you images from a fax machine." That's how old this project is, and you then get the students to blow it up and do. Rirkrit was very instructional. He just gave us details, instruction on what to do, and it started out with his passport. Rirkrit, was it 10 years on your passport?
Yeah, 10 years. I think that might have been like a couple passport or
Yeah,
3
there
passports.
there was, and then so what Rirkrit wanted to do was to open up the passport and connect them page to page, all the way from the beginning to the end, with all the visa, hundreds of different visas and things like that. And Rirkrit, you want to jump in at this point?
Yeah, well, I had made it's still kind of ongoing. I have a young artist friend in Thailand who's very good at, I would say, making copies. So I actually have him manually copy like my passport, like page by page, like, you know, drawing it or painting it. And so that was kind of like something that had been going on. So when I was asked by Tomas to think about a print, I thought, I mean, and the passport for me has always been like a big, I mean, important document, because of course, every time I had to go somewhere, I always had to get a visa. And in a certain way, like, you know, when I unfold it all out and look at, you know, each of the places or looking at the visa, you know, like different stories would come up, and I would be reminded me, you know, like of that situation I had been in at that time. So I thought it would be nice to do almost a kind of a memory, like to try to remember different things that happened through basically looking at the visas and the passport. And along with that came different stories and even like different notes and notations and writing that I carried, you know, and that's how it kind of slowly developed. Yeah.
You also gave us your sketchbook to deconstruct with all your recipes that you were, wherever you were performing, you had recipes for it. And
right. Yeah. And I'm actually, you know, I don't write or do I don't take a lot of notes, but for some reason, once in a while, I'll find a little notebook with things in it that, you know, and a lot of it's all in this print now. So it's really kind of a recording of a certain time of my life in that way. But I think, I mean, you know, of course, I've been teaching at the school, so it was easier in a sense to kind of come and go and keep. I mean, I don't think we knew exactly what the scope of it was. and it was really, I mean, the first print I ever made, really. I mean, I've made small etchings before when I was in school, but this is really the first time I'm really making a print. And I think the part of it for me was to kind of think print in a way, like what could I do, and how could I kind of make it very active in a sense, and interactive in that way. So I think that was part of my kind of impetus in how I laid it all out.
Right. Yeah. Well,
yeah.
you kept on faxing us maps of wherever you were. And that was the key to follow you, because it was the first. It took 3 years to do this project, I think, maybe a little bit more. But it was impossible to track you until we get a fax, and we knew exactly where you were. That was the interesting part. But then what was interesting is like when you came, every time you would let us know when you enter back into the Columbia spheres, the print shop, and we would lay things out, and you would work, then rearrange the whole thing, and then disappeared again. And that's, well.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think when I work in general, and this I did a lot before we had, internet and emails or whatever, is to send people faxes, kind of instructional things or questions, and just to kind of get people to kind of interact with me about like the situation that the work would be in. So in that sense, it was also, working with the shop, and of course, like I guess there were like 3-4 years of students who had gone through.
Yeah, I think 24 graduate students work on this project. So you have not only the longest prints that we've made. By the way, it's 70 something feet long, but the labor wise, you have the most accumulated graduate students working on this. So congratulations.
Yes.
Because the first conversation you would talk about, it's like, well, how long is the Rauschenberg piece, the tire piece?
Right.
And then you were working on something in Japan that's a mile long or something?
Yeah. Well, it was a kilometer long print,
Okay.
with a Japanese paper maker.
Right.
I mean, we never finished that, actually.
Really? Well, yeah, I can see it's too long. But anyway.
No, I mean, I think it's, I mean, I think for me, the great experience of it was also, I mean, seeing different people being involved with it. And also like to have the time to actually think and process through like the work, like I didn't have to like do everything at once, which I think was really, I mean, for me, really good, because I really need to kind of have time and think and reflect on it. I mean, it's hard also for me to put things down on a 2-dimensional situation, like to put it down on a flat piece of thing. so it was kind of stretching it out, and I guess maybe having all those people involved is kind of my way of dealing with like fixing things in time in that way.
It also works within the kind of the social construct that you were dealing with. So I mean, I remember you just, the more complicated, the more kind of the project you got more excited about it, because everything becomes a problem, but you love that kind of situations for these prints, and especially when you were working directly over. I can still remember we asked you not to put anything on the drawings, and you go and you put what is it, pomegranate juice all over it, and you let the big stain on. You say, well, make that too. I want you to be able to duplicate that. And then, a few of your hairs fell on there, and you put tape on it. You said, I want that too, until you realized we need a big bundle of your hair. And you said, okay, take that out, because you don't want to lose any more hair.
Well,
but yeah. What that is, and remember the papers were all buckling up, and the thing that you said to me that I really still resonate with me is like, you said, well, life is bumpy, just leave it. And I thought that was, whatever, it meant a lot to me to see an artist behave, and because a lot of the prints, a lot of the printmakers, everything is so precious and so precise. And oddly enough, actually, yeah, I think all of you guys are just messy, and you want to live the way they are. Anyway, but that meant a lot to our programming, especially with the kind of programming. We didn't want to actually create another print shop, and that was not our mission. It's a learning center. We want that to be live and active, and the idea to compete with another print shop is we're not interested in it, because LeRoy was able to give us enough endowment to never have to worry about financial structure of this institution. So we were able to do what we want to do, you know, without compromising one way or another. But anyway, anything else?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think that was very important that that we have that kind of sense of we like to have that kind of interaction with each other and have time, you know, at least for me, to have a long period of time over it. So I was learning things, you know, maybe more than the students themselves.
Right. Well, then we should move straight on to Sarah, because then she comes along. Sarah, are these your first prints that you've also made? You're a speaker.
There you are.
I made prints at Mass Art. I made prints actually in undergrad too. I mean, I made prints all my life, but I made them with like Kiki actually. I think through Mass Art beforehand, first published prints. But that was also through the program at Mass Art, where we made prints and then they were used as to make scholarships at the school.
Right. Yeah.
But this one, I think this one I wanted to do the the largest print we could with the print shops.
Did you do it? William Kentridge came before you. Is that right? And then you came in. You said, "How big was William?" And then we told you how much big, and then you decided you were going to do double that size.
So you got this amazing paper, and actually this print, and I sort of wanted to do, I mean, I think one of the things that just a couple of things that were interesting is we talked about how to translate the kind of idea of collage that was happening in the sculpture into a print. So to really kind of think of the plate as being an installation, and because all of these elements were almost like objects, and we collaged them together and moved them around. So I think the thing that's really special about this print shop, and I think all of us work with different print shops probably by now, even if we started at the Neiman Center, is that it's really like a laboratory. It's really experimental, and it doesn't, as you said, it doesn't have the structure that most print shops have, where there's always a calculation going on about, about how much the time and effort is going in to actually produce the print and how much it will pay itself back, which is a really, really unique privilege to the place. So everything's an experiment. So every print I did with you was sort of like, how do we test the boundaries? And in this one, it was sort of, how do we, again, not be precious that you were talking about. And again, this, I think it was like a 5-year print also. So we played around. I tried to do everything that you could do in a print that you couldn't do in a sculpture. I'm always interested in that idea of how do you, if you're in printmaking, what is essentials for printmaking that's really interesting. And so all of these were sort of pieces of images, and then they were all moved around, and we could play around because we could print them 7 different ways and then choose from that, and really think about how an image held together and fell apart. But I also think what I think is interesting to me about working in the print shop there is also this idea that, and really everything's a print. Anything can be printmaking. Even now, I think even more and more sculpture, when you look at fabrication, we're always going between, my shirt is probably print at some time. And we're always going through a period where 3-dimensional objects and one-dimensional imaging are in conversation with each other, right? When we 3D image, we're printing, actually, or 3D printing all the time. So that was one of the other things that was interesting to me, to make something really dynamic that was really a building of a print that looked like it was coming together and falling apart in front of your eyes. But this was a super challenging print. The color, I was gonna say, you got this beautiful, Tomas, I remember you found this beautiful paper in China, and the color is actually not, that's not the base color. Like that cream color is actually a plate. So, and the white, for certain parts of it, the white is actually the paper. So it was a really, really complex register. And we really wanted to like build it till it was really teetering on collapse. And it has a seam in it that's actually, you know, zigzags through the print so that you can't see the seam of the two plates.
The reason why we needed the seams, because that was the biggest bed size that you max out the bed size, so we had to flip it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you put, I mean, you tested the print shop in terms of what it can possibly do. You push us all the way to that edge. But, and yeah, can we see the night version? Yeah, that's it. Actually, this is clearer, right, Sarah?
Clearer?
I can see this better than I can see the day one. So they were meant to be what? To mirror each other? Is that how you were?
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to really be thinking about the fact that it was a print, that you could register it in its opposite, and that you could just flip it. It's something you can do with a print that you can't do with a drawing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and the other complicated problem with what beyond the pushing the size limitation that we were able to do. Oh, what happened?
We're still here, Tomas, don't worry. Did you lose us?
Yeah, I lost everything.
So you want to click the Zoom application?
Okay.
Do you see us now?
No,
What do you see?
I see nothing still. Okay, well, maybe somebody can.
You want me to, so you want to go to the next one, the image? Did someone?
Yes.
So this is a print I made, you know, I guess 5 years later, and I was working on I was really interested in this idea of something that became site specific no matter where you brought it. So it would be like a found object that if you put it on the table, you know, it would look like it was always there. So I was building this fire escape for a cat that actually went over a building. And when I went to the print shop, I decided, you know, it was 3D printed and it was being made out of steel, and it goes over buildings outside. And the idea was it had three, you know, it was like an erector set. It had three things. It had a ladder, a balcony, and a stair. But I wanted this print to actually really be about that process of, like, you know, a 3D print that then folds up. And so I always use these pads. And so I took like a really mundane object and we actually printed it. So it was, you know, these classic 8.5 by 11 pads, but we made the pad and then just put the pad into the printer and let it burn it out. So it was also nice because you saw the fact that, like, these, yeah, that's what a laser printer is doing. It's actually, you know, heating up and burning the paper. So I really wanted to play with that, the burning of the paper itself. And then, you know, we actually didn't really know what the print would be, but I loved this kind of like when you lifted it up and it folded out, almost like the printer was jammed, like, you know, paper printer was jammed. So I tacked it on the wall and just pulled it up and let it furl out. And then, you know, I liked the object it came from as much as the object itself. So the ladder is that little part underneath. And then I like this idea of like the chads, the shards. So the print is like the shards, the leftovers from that are you know, taken out of the piece to cut out the balconies, and it's just on the floor. Right.
Yeah. When Sarah was talking about printing the notepad, we actually have to print the notepad on really art paper that so it won't fall apart, because the traditional Sarah came to us with this regular notepad, which will not hold up. It's not archival. So we have to make a replica, print a replica of the notepad before anything gets started. I mean, we spent a lot of time just doing that alone before your interventions with the laser machine. Yeah. Can we go to the next one?
So this one and the next one, I was thinking about just how you broke down the way we were seeing it, seeing a perspective in space. And I wanted to think about how a sculpture or a print is a tool for seeing. So I was playing with these ideas of these tools for seeing. So it was, an eye chart, obviously it's a test for perspective and how far you can see. And then to flip it up, again, this is super simple. It's just we printed black on one side, and then it's white on the other, and then it's just folded up. So you have the negative space on the bottom, and then you have the black at the top. But it becomes almost like a 1-point perspective sculpture as well in space.
Yeah.
Do you have the Ishihara chart as well in there, Tomas?
Let's see. Oh,
You don't. So I did the Ishihara's. Was this the last one?
Yeah, I could pull that up for you if you wanted though.
no, it's okay. Sarah?
Yeah. Tomas is still lost. Do you want me to talk more about it, Tomas?
Yeah, well.
Or you go to the next one?
Yeah.
Questions? We're looking at it. If you can't see it, that's what we're looking at. We're looking at eye chart, but maybe you should go to the next person.
Okay. Shahzia?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hi. Shahzia. Oh, hey, yeah, I remember these now.
Yeah, I thought they were done earlier, like maybe 99, but that was the first project.
Yeah. Again, yeah. The other thing that was happening is like from the beginning, when we invite an artist, then let's say Kiki, then she would say, hey, I would ask her, who do you think we should work with, or some of the artists? So it's from mouth to mouth, from one artist to the next. That's how the introduction was made. And I'm trying to figure out where you and I intersect, Shahzia. Who got us together for this? Because I've always been a fan of your drawings and you paint your work, but I don't remember how we hooked up.
I think I was teaching like a just a adjunct class.
That's right, yeah.
So it could have been around that time.
No, that's it. I think that's the right connection. Do you want to say anything about these?
Sure. I this is a time when I was trying to sort of accumulate and develop like a lexicon of forms and images that were where I was looking at very transient forms in manuscript paintings and seeing how I can like translate them or transform them. And as so that's why there's a very sort of isolated focus on forms and images themselves and less, I guess, on the background. So I think that was definitely a conversation I remember having at the workshop also, because I was such a, I was working with ink and drawing all the time. And I was like, well, if I can just draw it, why do I need to make a print out of it? So I remember those conversations early on, which was great, because then, it pushed you to think very differently. And so this particular, the whole series, the 6 here, are very much based on that sort of conversation between a fluid material like ink, and then also, running off with whatever experiments that were going to happen on the plate itself, and developing like a dialogue between the forms, and then being able to use them in other types of ways. So I think this project is the first one, right? And then I think there was another one we did.
We did 3 total. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So yeah, this was literally like a very detailed drawing on the copper plate itself.
Right.
So there was also this idea of like working on the soft ground with so much attention to the like hand and the pressure of hand, and getting like the recording happening of gesture and hand itself, and translating, sort of being able to see how, a very sort of detailed process of my work method in studio, which would be accumulate very steadily, slowly, a graphite mark. And then here it was almost like a very different type of labor, almost subtractive labor. But these two types of processes, how they would come about in a very different environment. So I think there was this piece definitely I recall was like built on that engagement with pencil and graphite and the pressure of that on the soft ground. This was, I think, also a time when I was doing this residency in Laos with France Morin, Quiet in the Land project. So some of the forms probably were coming from there.
Yeah. Well, I remember the complicated part of the print is what you're talking about, how delicate your marks were. It was very hard to get the subtlety. I mean, this doesn't really translate that well, but if you see it in person, you can see how
incredibly detailed.
Yeah. And it was very hard for us to print this because the paper actually is white. That's black ink sitting on top of that. It's not.
I remember it looked like velvet.
Yeah, exactly.
And almost like we didn't use any dry point. I don't remember, but it had like a very sort of kind of a three-dimensional surface.
Yeah. Yeah, and you did another set of images that we don't have here, but it's all to do with your pencil again. These line drawings that you have.
Another portfolio.
Yeah.
Ones too. Yeah, so that's what I recall, that this of course, as everybody's pointed out, a very generous space to work with everybody, to bring in whatever concerns were, in one's head at that moment. So I think at that time, I definitely was building like this sort of questioning the relationship between drawing and printmaking. And I think from that period here, then later when I did very large scale projects later with using printmaking, but the foundation was laid out here with you guys. So
right.
I appreciate that quite a bit.
Yeah. Okay. Should we move on to Sanford, and then we'll circle back to anyone who.
Oh. Yep, we can do that. There was a bit of a strange sound. You may have touched your mic, Sanford, just so you know.
I did. That was me.
Okay. Well, it was a great entrance noise.
Sanford.
Hey, how's everybody doing today?
Good. Yeah, so when did we start talking about the project? I remember seeing your quilted works in your studio, and that's when the conversation began, right?
Yeah. And similar to Sarah, I had done a few prior projects with a different publishers, but ranging from lithographs to oversized wood blocks. I should mention I was in Japan for 3 years in the 90s, and I got really into, amongst other things, sort of imagery from tonkas and mandalas, but also ukiyo-e and wood blocks. So I did an oversized wood block, and I experimented with that. But when we got together, I was working on the quilt series, and like everyone's saying, due to the collaborative nature of the Neiman Center, we were able to really get deep, granular with this project by using handmade papers from Japan and China and cutting them up to make the backdrops, and then using various offset and silkscreen techniques with imagery that I'd use frequently in my larger quilts, but then to sort of use them in a more idiosyncratic way with these. Because in addition to the silkscreen, we were also doing hand work, so each print is literally different. And we did 7 different.
Spray paint a lot, and you didn't want anything to be exactly the same, so you let the drip. You were controlling drip time every time you did it, so that way there's no two of the same image.
Exactly. And I was interested in approaching this sort of as a patchwork, very much like it's referencing in the quilt itself. And also considering, the idea of sampling and cutting and pasting and sort of musical and sonic aesthetics, and finding a way to do that with the different processes that you guys have available at the Neiman Center. To me, printmaking always is, a way of experimenting with some of the conceptual ideas that I'm using in larger projects, but doing things in paper that you can't do with metal, that you can't do with, casting, that you can't do with lights and sound and so on. So really letting the paper do the work.
Can we go to the next?
And the series was called The Floating World, and it was influenced by, obviously, the Floating World series of ukiyo-e prints from the Edo period. And this is interesting. It's the first time that I actually was consciously referencing some G's Bend quilts. I don't really ever use G's Bend quilts in my own work because they're just so signature that it's a lot to contend with. But with these, it actually made sense because of how we were using paper. And if I remember, some of it was hand cut, but the majority was laser cut. So we had to take into account some of the burning of the edges, and in some cases it worked, in some cases it didn't. So, each one was very improvisatory, I think.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There's even your paper pattern that you brought in for us. There were no two of the same, so we had to sort of figure out a system, and we used the laser machine quite a bit to dissect, to cut up everything, and then you put it back together. And that was the model for it. And then I see actually, can we go back to that lotus shape? Now you were using that's a silkscreen image that you used that image quite a bit or early in the series.
Yeah, so that's basically an image that I made for a large installation piece that I'd done around 10 years earlier, around 2006, 2007 in Kansas City. And it was a glass disc that's around 7.5 feet in diameter. And it was hand etched. But if you look closer, what I call this lotus basically. So it's a lotus blossom. But as you get closer and you see each of those individual petals, you realize that they are diagrams from slave ships of how to pack human cargo. So each of those has probably over 360 human figures in them. Wow. So it's a deceptive symbol. On one level, it's very ornate and seductive, and then you get closer and you realize that it's actually sort of traumatic. But I was very interested in that dichotomy of sensibilities in those. And when I made that original piece, I always intended to replicate it enough so that it becomes its own type of standalone icon. It also looks like the iris of an eye and has all this Buddhist implications through the lotus. And I see it as a transcendent diagram. So this one, because, of course, the studios are up on 125th Street where I was teaching, where Prentice is, of course, and my studio was down the street from there. So this was the lotus of 125th Street.
Can we go to next?
And all of these, all the images that were silk screened on there, you can find in some of the larger works too. But when we were playing it with these, we were trying to make gestures and forms work with some of the printed matter from the papers itself.
And what was the rationale for using spray paint, Sanford? I know you use it on your quilt, and is that something that you just want to carry through? I mean, I
wanted to carry it through. I also wanted to, have something that we didn't have so much control over. Yeah. That was sort of like the free radical on this matrix that we had some degree of control. Right. So once again, it was also pushing, the idea of seriality and how none of these could all be identical.
Right. Yeah. Like every other, you actually wanted your hand on every one of these things. Mm-hmm. There was something about that. You were very insistent because a lot of the prints project we do, once the artist once we get a BAT, sort of step back. You didn't want that. You wanted to be there, present on every one of them because you want to execute it. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was partly a luxury of teaching there at the time, was being able to stop through and, you know, do some work repeatedly, you know, every week, every other week or so on. So it became almost a ritual. I was going there, hang out, we have lunch, talk to everybody, and then set stuff up and then do some spray paints and some hand marking on them. So I was very involved with the process, and I liked that degree of contact that we were having, because so much would happen in between my visits concerning all these tiny pieces of paper that were getting collaged together. And I just wanted to be present with that, and also to do something to, once again, disrupt the seriality of the process.
Right. What's interesting now, I'm looking at it, some of the pieces have over close to 100 different collages on one piece. That was crazy. We had to build this matrix and cut all the, I mean, all the images. We have to bring it to a system, so that way we can go in through it, because what you were doing, what you were pushing us to do is so complicated in terms of the collage aspect of it. It doesn't look like it here, but it is so many different pieces that gets put together.
And in retrospect, we did it fairly quickly, considering how laborious, you know, and process oriented this was. But I think that was also because I was coming in regularly, and I also didn't want to lose the energy, because it was so much work to put those collages together. You know, I wanted to be able to do my part so that the energy kept going to the next one and the next one, rather than having it stall for several months. And then everyone have to get back into the mindset of doing all this labor intensive stuff.
Yeah, we had about 10 graduate students working every day for 8 hours a day this summer.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so we were able to do it. That's good. Here's another image that was very recognizable if you identified the spray paint figure.
Oh, this one, yeah, right. Yeah, this one is the outline of a pretty famous image from the Library of Congress of a person that they've called, in terms for archive sakes, Gordon the Slave. And most people recognize this image as the back of a slave that is scarred. It's a whole, you know, basically almost a constellation of scars on the back from where he'd been whipped so many times from escaping. And rather than show that part, I actually made it just sort of the negative image created by that spray paint flare around it. So now, rather than looking like, you know, the slave with the traumas of whipping on his back, it actually looks like somebody surveying his land. It almost becomes a regal pose. And once again, I want to disrupt the seriality of a Black dramatic image.
All right. Okay. We're into the final one.
Yep. Yes, and these are just, you know, imagery that I've been using for years throughout my work to create perspective. This sort of geometric nimbus type of thing, juxtaposed with the clouds and these swirls. This one is called Vex.
That's great. Okay, where are we now? I think that's it.
For Sanford's images, yes.
Okay. Yeah, can we, I think we have a couple of images that there's a reason why I want to include some of the images of some of our projects that that we've done, just because they're real. I mean, this is actually a Michael Jew project, and we were using this silvering process. It was so complicated that we had to, everyone had to wear a suit with breathing apparatus just to work on this project. So, I mean, every one of our projects seems to get more complicated as we go along. Each artist will come in and look at the previous artist and say, well, what have they done? I mean, there was this kind of comparison, like, well, how can I do something different? And that was part of the thing that the center embraced quite a bit, is for us to push where we can take something, you know. And Mark Dion, also someone who spent a ton of time doing projects with us, because he's been a mentor with us for 22 years. And as everyone else with our projects, you know, we spend a lot of time working on different type. And this is a cabinet of curiosity from Mark, and it's all made out of lasers, and it's 3D rather than 2D here. Yeah. Oh, we shouldn't have put that in there. This is mine, but it was one of my, yeah, let's move on. I don't want to talk.
But we should. So.
No, it's okay, it's okay. The next one is Kara Walker. And Kara was someone who also taught at Columbia, and really, it was one of these projects that really got us going too, because, you know, it was her first time using images from a magazine rather than just her own. So she was using the backdrop in this prints from Harper Pictorial Picture History. So she brought in this magazine, and she asked us to, and the wood engraving back there is tiny. And she asked us to blow it up, and then when we blew it up, she then did her interventions by inserting her cutout into it. And what was amazing about Kara is that she would just sit there and with a black piece of construction paper, make a couple of lines and cut the shape directly onto this the image, as if, you know, and it just, the figure just appears. It's within 15, 20 minutes. And so she did this project quite fast for us. I mean, you know, a couple of weeks, and she was able to get 15 of these images done. And they're quite large. It's one of the, well, not as big as Sarah, but, you know, or Rirkrit, of course, longer. Okay, anyway. And I think the last one is William Kentridge. This was done actually by the graduate students themselves, because we didn't have a massive printer at the time. And he would invite their students to come into the studio, which we set up for him here at Columbia. And they would just sit there and watch him do this animation. And finally, at the end, he said, well, he likes this image to be done. And so the graduate students jumped on it and produced this project. So it was pretty amazing. Okay, I think I've said enough. I think Lilly needs to jump back
I
in.
also think we're out of time, because I thought there was these conversations that we could have as you were bringing up things. I didn't want to interrupt, but there were, things that I found fascinating. But maybe what you could
do, Lilly, yeah, we do have a bit of time, as long as folks can stick
Well, I'm just
around.
interested in the idea of multiples. I mean, like, because printmaking is usually a multiple, and some of you go in and make them one-offs, and so perhaps what is, the major advantage of making a print for you, or, what is so attractive about printmaking? And as Kiki pointed out, I think that, you need a lot of equipment for this. So it's kind of wonderful, to have the Neiman Center as a place to experiment. And I don't know, that's the question, I think, like what can you do in printmaking that you can't do in another one of your mediums? And is it, is it a standalone, or do you experiment and then take what you resolve here and, put it into your other practices?
I can say for me that working on paper versus working on cloth, you're dealing with all kinds of different absorbency and texture, opacity and color issues. So in in some respects, it's a very fast version of what I've been doing in the studio. I think for me to do the idiosyncratic, hand gestures on top was a way of really thinking about the viewer. And if somebody wanted that piece, that they would actually have something that was different than the next person who bought this, than the one, the next number in the edition, so that no two were the same. And if they were ever in the same room, you'd start to look at the differences. And I thought that's another thing that I can't really do with the large ones, because the material I use is so sort of rare and unique that they're never two the same anyway. So I wanted that to happen.
Well, I remember when we first started the project, Sanford, you wanted us to start going on eBay, looking for try to buy up all the quilt and all that stuff. We found that to be impossible.
Mm-hmm.
And you changed, you shifted, conception, shifted the idea of what you wanted, and then you were okay with the idea of using the image, but they all have to be different. I remember that kind of conversation that you insisted that they have to be unique.
Also through that process, when I started to encounter the different types of papers, that was super exciting because there was just so many possibilities, different possibilities than I would have in fabric at that time with quilts, you know, ready-made quilts at least.
For me, I mean, it's like actually having a place to go to work because I actually don't have a studio. So having a print shop with all these people working was like kind of like a nice, like a nice change of pace. So for me, I think it's more like that kind of interaction really. And I mean, I've been working on a print in Singapore, and it also has that same kind of feeling. So because then I go and spend a lot of time there. So for me, it's kind of like actually having a place to work in that and seeing people and getting free lunch from Tomas.
We should all go. Is it lunchtime now? But how about the collaborative, aspects of it, because you're working with so many people? Is that different from other parts of your practice? I mean, and does it impact the work when you're having other people help you, or whatever the limitations of what you can do with your idea? I mean,
I think for me, as you were saying about that idea of like the multiple and the kind of unique, I like the fact that there are other people's hands that could like shift things a bit. So I like that kind of chance things that, that things happen that I'm not totally in control of. And it's a little bit kind of like giving people a recipe to cook something, and then they add whatever they can, or they take things away because they don't have it. So it's kind of like that for me, working with people there.
great. Yeah.
I think there's a kind of performative in it too. It's a nice idea of the recipe. It's like, it's like playing a piece of music or doing a dance work too, I think. But I think that model is the basis for a lot of making work, and you just see the teamwork in printmaking still has this kind of old structure to it at the shop. But whether you do sculpture or you do painting or you do drawing, there is kind of a shop structure behind it. But what's really nice about it is it has this traditional structure, and then you can, at least in certain shops, you can break down the boundaries, I think, which is exciting. And the second thing I think is interesting is the collaborative. I think it's the generative, is that you see things generate before, and you really see that. It's always in artwork, but you see it with printmaking, because you have to make a decision when to stop the generative and then addition it or not. And I think that at least for me, the prints always generate another artwork. And so that conversation back and forth, you see it with the students too. I always tell students at Columbia to do printmaking, because it's a place. It's a weird, as Rirkrit said, it's a different environment than your studio. And I think a lot of people actually takes pressure off of them, and they're more playful, they're more loose, and then they find something in print and then bring it back to their larger body of work.
For me, I would say it helped me build up a practice of animation. So it was generative in that way for sure. I think the very sort of intimacy of material where you encounter the plate and then something else was bound to happen. And you would see multiple versions of different sort of variations and iteration with a different kind of approach to how a spit bite would occur versus, its earlier stage. I think I remember wanting to take all the different experiments that had happened and take all that data with me, with all the materials, and continue working on them, continue sort of drawing on the half-done prints, etc. And then scanning all of that because I think this is like that time when we were looking at, you know, other types, multimedia processes, and I think the animation came about from forcing yourself to think through layers.
Yeah.
So that's very much that it pushed me.
Yeah, no, actually you did. You wanted all of the images, and we were scanning a lot of things in just because you knew that animations was the part of the thing that you were working through.
Yeah. Yeah, so it was really cool because one came to it kind of questioning its relationship to drawing, because I would work faster just with ink and brush, and you know, and I couldn't understand how to let go of that control where it would be a much more collaborative space. But then I think at the end of that process, it was like, well, I'm actually going in the direction of animation. So that was very unexpected, but makes a lot of sense.
The printmaking also, you know, to me historically is one of the most radical inventions, this idea of generating multitudes, but particularly when you get into in the 1900s lithography, and this idea, it's like a complete model of a kind of deconstructed world where you're looking in layers. You're looking in layers and time, and you're approaching something over and over and over again in time, but with space in between those moments. And that each time it gives you a chance to either reiterate the past or change the past. It's a generous medium that allows you to, you know, make mistakes and get rid of them. You can, or, you know, or find the meaning, that the advantage to your mistakes or something like that. And also, you know, I mean, it has a radical history of how prints, the proliferation of images have been used, but also it's the closest to nature in a way. Like, you know, if you look at all of us, the multitudes of us that have commonality, similarity, and difference. Or, you know, if I look out the window of every leaf, it's close to that, you know, and that each thing, what Sanford was saying, the nuance that everything can hold a difference, but then that can be evident or not evident to people. But it's just, it's an incredible space to work in, and to work in a print shop. The generosity of the people you get to work with, like musicians who work together, you have to be generous and kind to work in a print shop. And it hasn't always been true there. It hasn't worked all the time, but it has gotten to a point where it works very well. And the students are always kind and generous to the artists, yeah. You know, and that's a great thing, to know that you have participated in something and that you've empowered other people, that they can find their own visions and things. And then also for them to have the opportunity to be in all these people's minds, yeah. You know, and see the uniqueness and how each one can be totally different and it can work. You know, the Neiman Center is a wonderful place. And, you know, I think from all of us, we hope it continues for a very long time.
And it will be. I mean, the generosity of the artists, I mean, that's what built this place. It's not some bureaucrats or some, you know, it's none of that. It's about artists working in a space with other younger artists. And that's the generosity that I think, that's why I have you guys and the group of artists that I've shown, is because it starts there. It starts with the mentorship. It's the generosity. And it goes back to what LeRoy really was talking about. How do you get that?
Oh, okay. I just wanted to invite Fong into this part of the conversation because I know he was interested to speak about LeRoy's legacy.
Can I just add one thing here right now before Fong? You know, Tomas, could you just show that picture, that drawing of LeRoy of Muhammad Ali that you showed me before we started? Yeah. Just
so before. In 2009, I was Leroy showed me a sketchbook of his that he did. It's when Muhammad Ali was still named Cassius Clay. And this is the fight with Sonny Liston. And he did a whole, and he would always talk about this, this sketchbook of his, and he never showed it to me. Finally, he brought it to the center. It was about over 100 pages of this sketchbook. And he said that it's the most precious thing to him. This sketchbook means everything to him. And he started showing it to me. And it's about the whole fight. Leroy was able to capture the two fights that they had. One when when Muhammad Ali was still named Cassius Clay, and the fight after when he was named Muhammad Ali. But anyway, so I've always wanted to work on this, make a print of this, the young Cassius Clay. And unfortunately, we didn't do it when he was still living, but now since his 25th anniversary, we were able to get the estate to say for us to make this print. So anyway.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Tisha.
Phong, where are you?
Phong, where are you, Phong?
I'm here. Thank you for such a great conversation. Artists among artists. I feel right at home right away, easily. But I don't know I could really make it more succinct, but I feel that having listened to you all, and especially having met Leroy soon after Tomas's first show at Von Linto Gallery, I think it was 2006. I think it was in the fall. But in thinking about what you have said back and forth, I can't help but to think of E.B. White, you know, his great long essay, Here is New York. You probably remember. I could only paraphrase it. He basically said that there's roughly three kinds of New Yorks. The first is the New York for those who were born here, who generally take the city for granted, you know, accepting its enormous yet compressed size, its constant noisiness and whatnot, constant distraction as a natural way of life. And then there's a second New York. There is a New York of the commuters, you know, who live in the suburb, and they only come to work in the city during the day. They are considered as locusts who devour the city each day when they come to work, and then spitting out everything each night when they are on the train heading back to the suburb. So the third New York is the New York of those who were born somewhere else and came to the city in quest for something. And these three sort of cities together, I think the last one, the last third is it's just an incredible summation of an odyssey, because I'm thinking of it being like Tomas, you know, who's born in Saigon or otherwise called Ho Chi Minh City, Rirkrit born in Cyrus, and you know, Kiki, believe it or not, was born in Germany. Sanford in LA. I think you, Lilly, was born in Chengdu, China, if I'm correct. Mm-hmm. You know, so it's Sarah's born in Boston. Am I right, Sarah? So yes. it's this third city that account for New York intense disposition. It's all of its culture or dedication to the arts, you know. I'm thinking in that because, you know, I was very moved. Two shows that I remember seeing that moved me, that it questioned me deeply. One was Kurt Vanderdoe MoMA show, High and Low, in 1990 maybe. It was very compelling show. I know it did not receive favorable criticism, because he put in the context of high art along with comics, cartoon, caricature, graffiti, and advertisement, all of it. And the other show that moved me, that it sort of compelled me to think differently, was Robert Rosenblum's show of Norman Rockwell in 2001 at the Guggenheim. So it really compelled me to think differently, because when I spoke to Leroy about his upbringing, more or less, he told a beautiful story of how he was so envious of Leon Gullett. And then, you know, Kiki, it's so compelling. Yeah, he was, you know, he was thinking about art in some other ways, why experiencing Leon and Nancy run the step of Chicago Art Institute protesting against the war, you know, with their monster group. I think June Lee was part of that, and Irving Patlin and other people. I just think in that way, in the sense that if you were to think about how Norman Rockwell became a kind of revisionist artist, you know, and I know he was a big deal in the 50s. Even Nabokov had written about Norman Rockwell, saying that he was using his brilliant techniques to banal use to the mass, comparing him to being Dali's twin brothers kidnapped by some gypsy in Babyland, something like that. It's so fascinating to me to think about the context of how not Rockwell have influenced, you know, tons of artists that we know. Hopefully this summer I get to go to Maine and talk to John Curran about this. But I just felt there's something about this, his ability to mobilize popular image to the mass, you know? I think that's something that we need to think about deeply about it, because recently I've been going back and thinking about CIA, how it was created in 1947. Literally, why I remember it clearly, because it's created after the day of my birthday, September 17th. And then a few weeks later, Levittown was created in October 1st, also the same year. So that, when you put in that context, you see how LeRoy Neiman is really more interested in to mobilize his, you know, idea of impressionism, the fleeting images of impressionistic portrayed as a criteria of pleasure, you know, be it sport, music, and something else. So there's a place there that I think we need to think differently, because lately I just gone to see the show at Cars at Brooklyn Museum. You know, we just interviewed him, and we done an in-depth interview with him, who's now being taken somewhat seriously, or hopefully more so, among us. And the way that years ago we thought of Keith Haring, we thought of Kenneth Scharf in the same way. So I don't know, in the context of democratic vistas, you know, but lately I'm thinking so much about Walt Whitman, democratic vistas. And I just feel there's a place, the elbow room for everyone in this world. And then the art world is hopefully will open up more and more for those different perspectives. Because as a publisher, I'm compelled to think of the world a bit broader rather than just in the context of the art world. So I feel there's something beautiful. I remember in 2015, when our consultant editor, Raymond Foy, who we admire, he was a guest critic in the Rail, and he quoted the poet who I admire very much, named James Schuyler, who was writing criticism along with John Ashbery and Irving Sandler and other people in the 50s, 60s. And he said that I almost never think about in terms of value judgment. Raymond felt, he said that he was always get suspicious any kind of theoretical position, because he feel that artists are teachers in general. And if you come in from a set position, you're gonna miss an important part of the story. And I feel that what you know, LeRoy done as an artist and his generosity are a kind of a total revisionist necessity. And I don't know who will be the next Robert Rosenblum to do anything in the greater depth, but it will happen. And I'm just feel very privileged and happy to be here with you guys to talk in this context. And yeah, I'm thinking about more and more about people like him. And so you know, to be continued, really, to be continued. Witness is self-selecting. So we all entitled to that revisionist perspective. So thank you so much, Kiki, Shahzia, Lilly, Sarah, and Rirkrit, and yes, Sanford, you owe me a call. Back to you.
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much for such an interesting conversation.
Actually, before I must say, Kiki was talking about, it hasn't been worked. I mean, always with the print, the center here with the master printer, but now we have an amazing printer, Nathan Catlin, and then also Megan Foster are the two amazing printers that we have. I just want to say that because I've not said anything about at the heart of the program are these master printers. Anyway, that's it. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
So we do have a tradition here at the Rail of ending each event with a short poetry reading. And today I'm very excited to introduce Noa Mendoza, who is a recent graduate from Vassar College. She's currently a fellow at Wendy's Subway and an intern at Ugly Duckling Press. Her writing seeks to permeate the boundaries between English and Spanish, sound and written word, narrative and poetry. Her work appears in Narratively magazine, Umlaut magazine, Fekun magazine, and the Vassar Review, among others. She also has an upcoming chapbook in the works to be published by Wendy's Subway. Coming to us live from a print shop, I believe. No, I will hand you the mic.
Hi, yeah, thank you. I am coming live from a print shop. Yeah, and I feel really grateful to be in dialogue with all of you and to share some virtual space on this Monday afternoon. So yeah, I'll close this out with some work from a different medium, but hopefully some serendipitous ties here. Okay, this is called Creature. I was asked one morning to write a poem by a squirrel. She appeared on my windowsill with a fistful of leaves from the neighbor's linden tree, her nest bowed by the air conditioner. From bed, someone else wakes, someone else tells me that deer flee human hair and dogs run from hot sauce, but squirrels must be killed if they return to nest. Some words exist only with love. This is why I must insist on hearing them spelled by the creatures that eat my mornings. Ternura, cachorro, linda, amor, te quiero, te amo. As if I have asked to be roused, every morning I could describe their ringing like a relief. Pitu, pitu, pitu. Creature, an animal as distinct from a human being. Criatura, a child, something precious. Language channels itself through memory, often like a clot. These days I am quite clotted. When I toss the leaves, she returns bearing. What would it be? She returns bearing. A joke I tell the kids. What has two arms but can't hold? Would it be time? The animal's polypi nipples hold space for every soft and small lip that could have suckled there. We are mothered by animals as we are mothered by animals. I tell this to the squirrel that I will have to kill as she secures my air conditioner. Some words only exist to me with ternura. This is why I must insist on holding space for what could have suckled there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Noa. And thank you everyone who joined us today, both on the panel side and in the audience, for such an exciting conversation. We do run these events every day, and tomorrow Daniel Gibson and Amanda Grobitzi will be in conversation. But now feel free to turn on your mics to say goodbye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Noah.
Bye.
Thanks so much, Sarah, Lilly, Rirkrit, Sanford, Kiki,
Take care.
Thank you, Noah. Thank you, Kiki. Thank you, Sarah. Shahzia, thank you. Thanks, Kiki.
Love you.
Thank you, Kiki.
Bye.
Thank you, Charlie. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Lewis. Thank you, Mavaka.
See you again.
Thank you, Noah, for the reading. Beautiful.
Thank you, Fang.
Thank you, you all. Thank you, Lily.
Thank you, Fang.
How do I get off this thing?
Thanks, Thomas. Rirkrit.
Thank you, Sanford.
Later, y'all.
Sarah, y'all killed it.
Thank you.
Go to see
Word.
Shahzia's show too. Don't forget, you guys.
Oh, yeah. amazing
Yeah,
show,
okay.
Wonderful show.
Okay.
And
Lunch-
Sarah,
No, you
you have
can't read it.
something.
Where's
Yes,
lunch?
absolutely. All right, Tomas, I'm gonna call.
Noah killed the reading.
Much love and courage, you guys.